Hi, good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are in this country. Hi. Hi, we are just waiting a few minutes for Cam to join. Um, Hi, Rachel. Hi, Alex. Oh, it's a good Wednesday. Good Wednesday to talk about race and capitalism and this music industry. I am actually pretty good. I did a workout. My niece is asleep, and we're going to hope she sleeps through this, or else you're going to see me jump up and grab a baby. But I'm good. I'm excited I feel re-energized for the movement. I'm wearing my shirt, phenomenally black. So I'm ready. I am ready. Oh, Cam said she'll be here in a moment. So, hi. Hi, Deb. And here she is. Let me get her right now. Um, da, 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 da. And here we go. Da, da. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I was just saying, I feel good today.
Good.
We're going to see. My niece is on an interesting schedule. So if she wakes up, she will join us.
Honestly, I understand that on deep level.
She's starting solid food, so she's
Uh-huh.
on a whole different world.
I know,
I'm
I
like,
feel
oh,
like I have the ups and downs, and then it's like, who knows what day she's having today, like.
exactly. I'm like, I have energy, so I can handle. And I was like, I'm wearing my phenomenally black shirt, so I feel like I
Yay.
am ready for today. Today. Are you having a good day so
Yeah,
far?
it's going okay so far. It's kind of sunny out. I feel like whenever it's cloudy, I have the heavier like morning where you're just like, oh gosh, I don't know
Yes.
today.
Yeah. I got up and did an early morning workout because I was like, I don't know what the weather in California is going to be like today.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely less humid than Nashville.
That's
So
true.
I'm
It's
enjoying
really
these California days, even though I feel like I'll be here forever at this
yeah.
point. I don't know when I'm coming back. Thanks for joining me again. Thanks
Yes.
for coming back and continuing this conversation about race and music. And I
Yes.
know we've had some texts, and I've had some good days and some bad days
I know.
in this movement and in this awakening. And I feel like I've lost a few friendships, and I
I
feel
know.
like I've gained
That's
a lot more
that's
in
wonderful to hear.
yes.
I know
Yeah.
it's so nice to see. I just feel like you and Sarah Buxton, like whenever we're on like a group chat, it's like, oh, that makes my heart happy.
Yes.
Just because it's really is, we're all on journeys at different times of like understanding this, and it feels so heartwarming when there's one moment that everybody like, oh, I feel like we're all kind of on the same page kind of right now. And then, obviously as you move forward, you're moving forward at your pace, and there are people that are still learning things that you already know, and there's people that already know things that you're still learning, and it can be frustrating and lonely to feel like not everybody is doing the same steps at the same time, and
Yes, they're all growing differently. And me and Sarah talk about it a lot because the other day, like she was like, oh, I feel heavy. And then she was like, oh, that's my privilege because I can walk away from it and take a break and you can't. I'm like, well, that's the point right there. You're understanding it's not your fault.
yeah,
Like but you're understanding how we're different and how like the feeling, the awareness, like the
yeah,
awareness is heavy. It
yeah.
is. And
And that is such an important thing too. The more I feel like white people are understanding this, and I'm understanding this, and then because I think there's this natural spring of I want to fix things, and I
Mm-hmm.
want to help. And part of it is because I want to feel better. Like, I don't
Yes.
want to feel so uncomfortable anymore. And part of it is because of genuine, like, oh man, this is messed up. I can't see the world like this anymore. I can't let
Yeah.
this be happening. And then in the rush to fix things, you bring along your privilege and
Yeah.
your whiteness and the thing that you've been taught your whole life to see the world this way. And you can be the most well-intentioned, obviously the like impact over intentions,
Yeah.
how important that is to understand, but you can be so like, I'm doing this for the right reasons and I care, and you still can't help but bring it with you. Like, you
Yeah.
have that baggage with you, and it's so hard to be like, okay, so how can I help without bringing that? And I feel like it's not so hard to do, but it's so hard for us to really see that, I think.
To really see it, and to, I think the first step is being conscious that you're gonna bring your privilege with you. Like, you're gonna bring your experiences and everything you've been taught. And this country, at its roots, is based in like white supremacy and racism. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's the
The whole
core.
world,
The whole world. Like, yes, the whole
anti-blackness,
world. It is.
is
It's what
crazy.
it's based on. So even just ex- realizing that is a lot, to be like, oh,
Yeah,
okay.
right.
So we're going up against, like, we're changing everything.
Yeah. No, and
Okay.
that's that cognitive dissonance. Like,
Yeah.
you have this idea of what the world is, and then some new information comes and it doesn't fit with the
No.
shape that you have of the world or the pattern or whatever. And you can either, like, the dissonance happens and you can sit with it for a second and try to assimilate this new information and adjust
Mhm.
your worldview, or you can say, I think that isn't real and I'm
Yeah.
going to reject it. I'm going to hold on to this worldview. But that worldview is just so central to who you are, your
Yeah.
identity, like how you operate in the world, your behavior. So, like, yeah, how threatening it feels to have that challenged, because it's so, I think it's just so wild it's wild for me to realize how I never had to think about that, and I never had to question it, and I never had to even understand what a worldview was. It's like
Mhm.
when you're learning a language, like in seventh grade, and it's like, this is crazy. There's other languages, and there's a system to language, and there's verbs, and it's like, oh, it works in a certain way. It's like, yeah, because I never thought about language because I just spoke English, and that was the dominant culture, and I could just speak English as much as I wanted and never
Yeah.
had to think about it. And it's like, oh, other people had to learn not only the rules of their own language but of another language, just to, like, yeah, it's a cognitive leap that's happening
It's,
for a lot of people.
and I think with the friendships I say that I've lost, I don't think they're fully lost. I think they're on hold because they're battling that. They're looking at the world and they're like, wait, I don't know if I like that world. I'm like, well, it is the world, and
Yeah.
you have to process that this is really what it's like. And just because one person hasn't experienced this or another person doesn't make it not real. And I've
Yeah.
had some people that have known me for a long time, and I've had to work on not code switching. And that is my defense mechanism to fit
Mm-hmm.
into different environments.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had to say to myself, you're not going to do that anymore. You're going to show up authentically, and we're going to just be you. You're not going to try to fit into the white world or fit into the black world. Just be you
Mm-hmm.
100% of the time. And that's made people uncomfortable. It has made people be like, why are you doing this? I'm like, I'm just being me. And
And how,
that's
like,
my
hard.
fault for not doing that. But that's also where I've had to work on and sit and be like, why am I not saying my truth in
I
this
know.
scenario? Or why am I talking on the phone this way? Like, why am I making my voice a little different? What have I been taught about
Yeah,
how to
being
get
the
better
angry
customer
black woman.
service, or
Yeah.
all this stuff, or
Yeah.
how to play into being light skinned? Because I've had many people, even in jobs, be like, if you wear your hair straight, it's going to be better. Or if you pull it back, it's going to be
Yeah.
better because it just looks better
Yeah.
and you look more put together. You look more kept.
Yeah.
And that has been ingrained in me since I was a child. And I don't even think they were meaning it like the way it actually is. I'm like, no, I should be able to do whatever I want with my hair. My
Yeah.
white friends can.
But even
What?
that thing of like people don't mean it, and we all are like, oh, I mean, that was, we kind of like, um, not nullify it, but just everyone's just like, oh, this was, those
Mm-hmm.
are microaggressions. Those are small
Yes.
things. That wasn't intended that way. And then somebody intended it.
Yes.
Somebody put a lot of thought and effort to set this thing up
Yes.
and to justify it to themselves,
Mm-hmm.
like over and over and over again for generations. Like
Yeah.
we bought human beings, used them for a labor force, and justified it to ourselves using religion, using whatever way possible. And then we keep doing it because nobody wants to be uncomfortable, so we just keep justifying it to ourselves. Well, it has to be this way,
Mm-hmm.
or part of this is, eugenics or whatever. And it's
Yeah.
just like it's never ending, the keep putting up of like explanations. And I think that's, yeah, sometimes it's like, oh, well, that's just a small thing. It's like, but no, it really came from someone who really for sure meant it. They
For
meant it.
sure meant it.
Yeah.
Well, even when you were talking about language, I think about slavery, and I think about when people were stolen from their land and brought to America, and all their language was taken away. All of their culture was taken away.
Yep.
So that we, like Americans, could grow this country. Like the thought of, like, as of today, like if somebody took me and I had to go to a different country and I didn't know anything, and we built it and we thought it was okay. People thought it was okay to sell a
Yeah.
human being. People thought it was okay to give a human being as a gift. Like that, I've had a lot of people come up to me in like my DMs and stuff and be like, well, we have to think about it in that time. And I'm like,
Oh yeah.
in that
Yeah,
time, like
that's,
you have to go back and be like, in that time it was okay. I'm like, no, it's never
yeah.
been okay.
Yeah.
I understand why they did it, for the purpose of money, and it's free labor and there's a lot that goes into it, but it's never been okay to
No.
sell a human being.
No.
Like I would never, because at our core, we are born with compassion and empathy and we're human. So
Yeah.
something has to switch to make you feel like you're more important and
Yes.
you're more valuable. In America, in many countries, I just talked to my niece in Australia about it, and have it where white is better. But race was created. Like race, we invented race.
Yeah,
We
that's something that I
invented
think
it.
a lot of people are still like grappling with, that there's no biological race. There's
Yeah.
no, it isn't real. There's more
No.
variation genetically within groups, if you were going to actually call it a group. Like
Yeah.
more variation within the group than between the groups. So there's no
Yeah.
distinct biological genetic reason to be, it's socially constructed. It doesn't actually exist. So that thing is, I definitely still keep running into people that, unfortunately still, they're like, oh, this is like a thing. It's a real thing that,
It's a real thing. And even I look at my family and I look at my brothers and sisters. And if we look at our skin tone coming from the same dad, we look so different in tone and I'm like, so you wouldn't even think that some of us are in the same family, but we would have been treated differently being in the same family if it was back when we were slaves. Like I probably would have been in the house, like, and I would have been a house
yeah,
slave. Like my dad would have definitely been picking cotton outside. Like he's dark. Like my brother, like he's more red. He could have probably passed and been used back and forth. Like there are, and those things seep into even our Black culture,
yeah,
into the colorisms that we do infighting about. like light is more pretty, because when you were lighter, you had more privileges as a slave. You could sleep
Right.
inside.
Yeah.
You weren't burning in the sun. Like, you were still getting raped and all sorts of things, but
Yeah.
you had more privileges being lighter. You had more privileges than being dark. Like,
Yeah.
even though those privileges weren't really privileges, but that is seeped into our culture, and people still go, oh, you're light, that's good. And like, it's still more digestible for people to handle me versus somebody like my friends that have darker skin. Like, they are still more uncomfortable in a room of dark skinned women. I'm
Yeah.
always like, what is that? Like, why are we more comfortable the lighter we are? Because white is what we're going for.
Yeah.
Everybody, white wins. White
Right.
men win, really.
And that's that also that I feel like I've seen some great, like, it's been doing research, kind of just like trying to learn as much, and that the anti-blackness is
Mhm.
also just what, so many people touch on, but Martin Luther King touched on too, just with
Mhm.
why people say, well, why is it different for the Black community versus, whatever model minority,
Mhm.
you're going to use to try and say, like, well, how come it's been different for the Black community than, you know,
Mhm.
Jews or
Yeah.
Asians or whatever. And that's that anti-Blackness that is just so, that, I mean, yeah, it's just when you start realizing how deeply rooted that is in so many parts of, and in everybody, like in all of us, like even in you, that's,
Yeah.
I mean, a wild thing that all of us have to unlearn.
Well, I think you're always trying to become anti-racist. You're never going to get to a place where you're fully anti-racist. Like, our whole culture, like, that's how we were brought up. So your goal is to actively work on becoming anti-racist, be actively working to realize your biases and realize where you need to be working. And I think a lot of people, when I say you're probably have a little bit of racism in you, they go, no, I'm not racist.
Yeah.
That's almost impossible to not have something,
No, it's
because the
for
way our
sure
country
possible.
is. Like,
Yeah.
you can't, like, I
You
have to
know,
have something. Like, we all
yeah,
have something. We've learned
I've heard
everything we've
from,
learned is big lies.
yeah, I've heard something from a friend of mine who was saying, because she recently had to fully accept that you have this in you. You have
Mhm.
racism in you. You were taught it. It's in your
Mhm.
heart, like it's in
Yeah.
you. And she was like, once I accepted that, it was like this key to like
Yes.
unlocking a new level of like, oh, okay, now I don't have to be defensive every time someone tells me something. Now I can listen. Now I can
Mhm.
learn at you know, a much more helpful way, because that first, I think there's a wall of just like, I don't see color or, that type of stuff. And then you finally get to like, no, this is real. It's purposeful. It's been
Mhm.
taught to us, and it's in me. And if I don't start, pulling it out piece by piece, uh, awfully, to be honest, it's not fun in the slightest. It's very embarrassing, awkward, um, uncomfortable, but
Mhm.
obviously in comparison to like being awkward and uncomfortable is for sure the better way to go than letting people keep getting killed.
Yes.
So,
And what's awkward and uncomfortable is that we have been taught that you don't discuss race or politics or religion,
mm-hmm.
because those aren't what we discuss, even though those are the basic founding principles of everything.
Yeah.
So, like, those are my value systems. Those are where everything that makes me me
Mm-hmm.
comes from. So, if I can't talk about race and politics and things with you, like, what are we discussing? Like, what are we talking about? Because those things are extremely important to me. They're
Yeah.
extremely important, that I want to know if you care about Breonna Taylor's killer's not being arrested. Like, I want to know if you're even aware of that. Because that matters to me, because that goes into all the ways that the Black community is being failed. And then when the Black community is failed, then you go into other minority communities being failed. And then you just go into women are being failed. Like, the intersectionality of all of it and how it's connected. I want to know. And it's uncomfortable to talk about because we have been taught to not talk about it. And I would love the culture to change. And I'm hoping this is doing it, where we can have conversations, because discussing race isn't bad. Discussing politics isn't bad. Like, I always say, hate is bad. Like, so if you are a hateful person, we might get into an argument because I don't like hate. But I even listen to some people that are pretty hateful, and I try to understand. I go, okay, where's that coming from? Like, where's the root of that? Because they learned that, because hate is a learned feeling.
But see,
People
also
aren't born hating.
That's still, I think, part of like you and your identity and where you come from, being a Black woman. You automatically have to do the work to figure out where everyone else is coming from.
Yeah.
Where, like, that's not automatic for other people in nearly that same depth that you.
I'm just going to move you out of the sun. My phone overheated on a conversation with Mickey, so I'm being preventative.
I feel like that's kind of an indication of how well it was going.
Yeah. I was like, oh. No, I've been so aware of my race since I was little. I'm very aware. I was very aware that I wasn't white, probably around like 6. Because that's when I realized I wasn't going to be Julie Andrews, and I don't look like her. And I cried. And there was a big to-do about, because my mom looks like Julie Andrews. So I thought, oh, I look like Julie Andrews.
Aww.
And then I was like, no, I don't look like Julie Andrews. And it was a defeating moment. And I always go back to that, because I go, oh, that's when a lot of my innocence was crushed, because I did not see other people doing what Julie Andrews was able to do on TV or in films or anything. I was like, oh, well, I don't look like that, so what do I get to do with my life? Like, I'm less than. I was 6, and I was already realizing I was less than a white woman. Yeah. And in just that moment. And I was like, oh.
For me,
and I started changing myself, and I started trying to be more and more like being white. Yeah. To fit into a world, but nobody asked me to do that. No. I just naturally knew that's what I had to do.
Yeah, and at 6, what other tools do you have? You know what I mean? You can't. And I, for example, me as a white woman, I thought growing up, you know, in the Bay Area, I thought my biggest thing was men and women are equal. That was my hill to die on, right? It's like, oh, like, I got this. I can be a Supreme Court justice and blah, blah, blah. And I probably didn't fully realize that we were not equal, and I could not have, like, it was going to be a separate game for me. Like, that probably didn't really go into my soul until, like, 29. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you had it at 6.
Yeah.
And I had it at 29. You know?
I go back, I go, wow, the difference in our experiences growing up not far away from each other. Yeah. We're in the same age bracket. Like, the experiences of that in the Bay Area, I keep thinking, I am so lucky that I have privilege, that I still had the privilege of having a parent that told me that I was beautiful, that said, you can be better than Julie Andrews. Like learn. Like, I still had to work against it. And as an adult, I was like, oh, okay, don't be ashamed that you like this, or you don't fit into this role of the Black community. Because I also, growing up in a white home, had to learn that just like in the white community, in the Black community, we're all different. And people lump it into one group. They're like, oh, those Black people. There are a lot of different types of people that are Black. There are a lot
Yes.
of different types of humans in general because we're human.
Yeah.
So I had to learn that. I had to be like, oh, I'm Black, but I don't have to act like that. I can be me. And it was an
Yeah.
unpacking of reading a lot of books and a lot of therapy to say, oh, I'm okay. Which is why now in my 30s, I'm like, I can speak my truth and know that I'm going to make mistakes while speaking it. And I might offend some people and I might have to apologize for some things, but I know my limit. And it's taken me till now to say, I'm not going to code switch. And
Yeah.
that's my mid 30s. And I'm like, it took me till 30 to realize I was.
Yeah.
To realize I was changing my personality to fit into different groups, to fit into certain meetings, and to work myself in the white world instead of allowing my worlds to just accept me for me, and the people that fit in it, and the people that don't. And
Yeah.
hopefully the world will shift in the next generation. Because in my generation, there wasn't a lot of mixed girls.
Yeah.
Like I talked to one of my friends that she was the only other mixed girl at my school. And she's like, we talked about how people ask us what we are all the time. All the time. They're like, what are you? What
Yeah.
are
Where are
you?
you from?
Yeah. And they're like, you're really exotic. What? Like, not even where are you from? Like, what are you? And I go, I'm a woman. Like,
Oh.
that's what I am. Like, do you want to know my culture? Do you want to know, like, my heritage?
Yeah.
Like, there are ways to ask it, but it's so offensive, I feel, to say to somebody, what are you? Like,
Because
someone,
you're other.
because I'm
You're other.
other.
Yeah. You're not the norm. You're
Mm-hmm.
not the majority. You're something else. So what else are you?
Because you don't do that. Like, there are many types of people that are white that are from many different backgrounds, and I don't ever go up to somebody that's white and go, what are you? I don't even ever think it. I would just never do it. But people do that to me, and I go, oh, this even goes back. Like, we even have to unpack that. Like, why are we comfortable talking to another human that way? Like, another
Yes.
human. And
And why it's still like, it's interesting to me too that just also like once you are made aware that that's not okay, like a lot of people still want to say, I'm just trying to compliment you, or I'm, like it's still this like, instead of listening, like, oh man, like that, it sounds like that's a negative experience for you when
yeah.
that happens to you. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that to people anymore. I don't want to put them through that anymore,
Yeah, I was able to have a really good conversation with an acquaintance of mine, and I put it on my Insta stories where she realized that offended me a long time ago, and she came back. She's like, "I'm sorry. Like, I thought exotic was
Yeah.
like beautiful," and I was like, "Well, you could call me beautiful. Like, exotic, just asking what I am and saying I'm exotic doesn't feel beautiful to me, and it
Yeah.
offends me." And we were able to discuss why it offends me and why she used that word, and come to a place where she's not going to call me exotic anymore, or any other mixed person. And I was like, oh, more healing conversations where you realize that you shouldn't care. You should care that it offends me. You shouldn't be like,
Yes.
why is it always offending you? I'm like, no, because calling me exotic, the roots of that are not good. Like calling me mixed blood. Like my great aunt used to call me mixed blood, and she came from a very racist home. And she thought, that's what you just call somebody that's Black and mixed. And I was like, no, we don't call me mixed blood. Like, that comes from the segregated South. Like, we're not going to use that term. We're not going to use Jim Crow era conversation. We're not going to use things just because that's what we have used. We're going to change our dialogue and find dialogue. We might have to completely shift how we communicate.
Yeah.
But the roots of our communication, even a lot of people that are in their 60s, 70s, comes from the Jim Crow era, and it's breaking that, because everybody believes what they were taught is true.
Yeah.
Everybody believes what's in textbooks is true. You should, if you go to school, you should be like, why would they teach me lies?
I know.
But when you figure out why they made those textbooks, and the textbooks, the Daughters of the Confederation rejected any textbook that said that the South was wrong for slavery. They rejected anything that would bring African Americans power, that would say that they have like energy or independence. They rejected any form of why this, like the Civil War happened, as it was negative to the South. And those are the textbooks that we've based our whole education system on. And they rejected the truth years ago. And I had a conversation with my dad, and he's like, well, how do you fix it? And I said, I don't know, but I want to know. I want the schools to change. I want the education to change. I want people to be on the boards. I want monuments to get removed. And he's like, well, where do you stop? And I'm like, I don't know where you stop. Like, I don't know where to stop.
I know. It is I think people get, definitely if you lived with a certain setup for a long time, it is a little bit harder for you to see an alternative in your mind. But if you, like, this is why I love that you do these conversations, because I think when you talk to different people, you get different answers, you get different energies and truths. And then you also start to realize the younger generation is like, no problem. Like, they see it, they are not having it, done. And then the people, it's going slower for the people that are in decision-making spaces, because, you know, they have compromised and assimilated and gotten into positions of power. And they're like, ooh, if we switch everything, how's that going to affect me? And my job, my money. And then the people that are younger are like, no, we're not having it. Like, and that makes me very excited for the future, I think.
And that's where I've told my dad, and I've told many people, I'm like, I don't know where we're going to need to stop, but I know we need to start. I'm like, I know that if I don't start talking about how slavery is still happening in this country with private prisons, and how much, like, people can learn where they bank and if they support private prisons, and if we don't talk about it, and some people are going to be uncomfortable, and some people are going to lose, because we built the system of capitalism, and we have to dismantle that a bit to create equality. So it is going to cause some people to have to give up some of what they feel like they've earned, but they've earned it also on the backs of other people. So do you want to earn it that way? Do you want to succeed that way? And even when people talk about the monuments, I'm like, do you want a monument that isn't speaking truth? I'm like, I don't know. Maybe you do. But I don't want a monument up that isn't real. I don't want plantations telling false stories about the history. I don't want any more lies. So
it blows my mind. People get so worked up over a statue of someone that's already dead than getting worked up over people that we could save right now.
Like, well, when people are posting about, they're like, I don't want that monument gone. And I'm like, well, what about this? They're like, well, they need to, like, it's going to take some time to figure out if that was legal or not. I'm like, why? Let's focus our attention on what matters. Like, you could get rid of all those statues. I don't want them up. But you know what would matter more is if you arrested people that killed unarmed Black men and women. If you, it's
or
kind
of Black men and women. Like, you are not the judge and jury. like
let's not kill anybody. Let's not kill people. That's how. I'm like, somebody said to me the other day, they're like, what happens if somebody was committing a crime on you? Like, wouldn't you want a gun? I was like, no. I'm like, I don't think that would help me. I personally don't believe in killing people. I believe in having a fair justice system that goes along in getting justice, but I also don't trust our justice system because I think there's a lot that needs to change in it. But I have faith that we can change it once we acknowledge that it is built to, it's built to benefit, first of all, white men, and then it is built to protect cops. And that's not saying that all cops are bad, because I don't believe that. But I believe the structure of policing is started with slavery. And it started, its roots were to catch runaway slaves. And then they built everything from that. And so when your roots are to catch Black men and women, when that's your root, like anything that grows from that is not going to grow pure.
Yeah.
And so I do think you have to figure out a way to fix it from the root. And obviously I don't know all the ways to do that. That's not my skill set. But I know if you're growing something in bad soil, you're not going to get some good plants. So we're going to have to fix some soil.
There's a lot of fear about, like, if you do anything else other than what exists right now, it's complete anarchy. Like, that is kind of a wild one. Yeah, I love the, like, I've seen, like, a lot of people talk about this, but just, like, what's going to happen with, like, the rapists, you know, who's going to catch the rapist? And it's like, haha, like, they catch them now.
They don't.
It's like, it's something, I mean, it's really nice, I think, to hear you touch on this, and a lot of people touch on just how connected we all are. And the levels of privilege and the levels of oppression are different, and that is incredibly important to start learning, because it helps you learn about yourself and learn about other people. But if you realize that it is a system that is purposeful and it's designed and it's connected, you can start, I just think you start seeing how, I think it brings us closer is really what I'm trying to say. Like, it feels like you're studying something that's going to separate us more and make us angrier. But it's like the more you understand how the whole thing is set up to organize us all, you know, in a way that seems efficient and making money for a few, it's like, it's just a big trap for everybody, you know, and
it affects everybody.
Get us all out of it.
Well, I go, if you're going to, I use Breonna Taylor a lot as an example because it's so horrific to me.
Yeah.
If you're not going to arrest, and I'm not even saying convict, arrest the people that killed her, then what? And that's so blatant to me, like how black and white that is, like how clear cut that should be happening.
Yeah.
Then if something happens to me, what chance do I have to survive or to have justice? Like, what chance do I have when something's not as clear cut? Like, what if we're not saying,
no, I
see
what you're saying.
Yeah. If we're not saying this is wrong, like, that makes me scared. That makes me scared to be in the South. It makes me scared to exist. And I come from privilege, and I have had I had a pretty good life. I mean, I've had abuse and things in my childhood, and that person got off because they're white. That's how I feel. If they were black, they'd be in jail. But I've even accepted that. I'm like, that is the way the world works at the time, but I'm going to change it so that world does not work that way for another child. But when I don't see the things changing, and I don't feel like the children now, I feel like they're getting the same hand that I was dealt, and they might not even have the same amount of privilege, then where do others have the right to say, I want this monument? I'm like, no, that monument is causing Black people to die today. The people that you're wanting to praise created a system that is screwing us over today. So I don't want to praise them. Like, I even go back to that. I'm like, I don't want to praise presidents that created a system that hurts me today. I'm not saying that they did not start our country or do great things as well, but they did some horrible things with planting the seeds for this country that are causing people to die. They are causing pay gaps. They are causing us to create different ways to oppress humans. So I don't want a monument of them because I don't feel like they were good or that they represent good anymore.
Yeah.
You know, like,
well, and it just
I have a big problem with George Washington, but and I'm not saying to destroy all George Washington's monuments, not at all. But I'm saying, can we tell the truth about who he was and the things that he did that are still affecting us today? Can we tell the good and the bad?
Yeah, because we all can handle the truth.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't seem that crazy. Like we literally could all be taught the truth. I mean, that seems...
And if you teach the truth, then people can also make their decisions. I always go back to Hitler. And I go, Hitler, for most people, there's still a few that don't think he was bad. Most people say, not a good human. Not a good human at all.
Yeah.
And Germany took away statues. They made amends. They did all the things that you should do after an atrocity.
Yeah.
America had centuries-long atrocities. And after those atrocities were over, we put up statues to commend them. Instead of taking away statues, we put more up. We never apologized for slavery. We never made amends for slavery. And we wonder why we know more about other country like apartheid. We know more about Hitler. We know more about other countries' atrocities than we know about our own atrocities. And history repeats itself. If you don't learn history, you will continue to repeat it. And the reason we are repeating it is because we haven't learned it. We don't know it. So the only way to fix our country is to learn it.
Yeah, and that's what's honestly so scary about sometimes this obsession with progress and technology and moving forward. And it sounds like we can get someplace new that's better, but ideas like what you're saying, like, it doesn't heal and it doesn't undo the damage done. It just morphs. It morphs from actual slavery to the prison system, to Jim Crow, and it just, like, the ideas keep living on because you just don't head on, like, no, this is what I'm hearing you say, like, in Germany, this is what happened.
Yeah.
Look at this whole picture. Take it in. Like, absorb it. Own it. Like, that's the thing that I feel like we keep dancing around. This, like, like paying slave owners when they lost all their slaves. Like, that just, it keeps being these concessions because nobody wants to fully acknowledge what's going on. And that's... people
don't want to be uncomfortable. People, like you've said, people don't want to be uncomfortable. And people don't want to talk about things outside of their bubble. And I think the more we discuss things outside of our bubble and we learn what we don't know, then we can start attacking it head on. Like, I didn't know about private prisons for a very long time. I didn't understand any of that.
Yeah.
And once I started unpeeling it, I was like, oh.
No, okay. Like, whenever the 13th came out, I was like, no. I was
like, what is...
This is insane. Yeah.
And then it took me, I was like, oh, how do we fix this? Like, this is slavery.
Yeah.
And even having to tell people, I'm like, that is slavery. Like, it's a form of slavery.
Yeah.
And when you learn corporations, like, fund them, and when you learn about different companies that use them to create the products that we then buy, that's all smoke and mirrors. They don't want people to see it because then it changes, and it changes the cash flow. Yeah. So I'm like, you shouldn't be using prisoners to profit. Like, that shouldn't be the point of our prison system. First of all, we have like 20% of the world's, like, people in prison. Like, we have a tremendous amount of people in prison compared to other countries, which I just look, I go, why? Why? Because it's been proven going to
It
prison
is for
does not
profit.
necessarily make you a better citizen.
No.
Like there's many other ways that we could deal
Rehabilitate.
with a quote unquote criminal. Since
Yeah.
most of the people that I would want to see in prison are not in prison.
Yeah.
I'm like, you are on the streets.
Well, and that's the thing too, is that I feel like we, as Americans,
Mm-hmm.
and as a world, like as human beings, we are so brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just, and not to toot our own horn or
Well, we
whatever,
are.
but I mean, we're just full of endless creativity and ideas. It
Mm-hmm.
just goes on and on and on. And the limits are just what get put on you from birth with this, you know, kind of messed up teachings that we keep giving everybody. And just think, if we removed that and we had like everybody say, okay, let's clean it up. Let's
Mm-hmm.
start the brainstorm, get everybody in the room. How are we going to, like, you know, acknowledge what we've done and look for the healing? I mean, I just think it would be, it's so powerful if you had everybody on the same team trying to do that, which I, deep down, I really do feel like, and maybe this is naive, I really do feel like people want that.
Yeah.
And I think they're just afraid or can't see how it's possible.
I think there's a lot of fear. I think there's a tremendous amount of fear because that conversation requires also accountability.
Right.
And it requires us to think outside of our box. And I've seen some corporations trying, which has been a blessing. I've loved the organization I post a lot about, 15% Pledge, where they are getting like stores to say that there's going to be 15% of the shelf space is going to be from Black owned companies. And not a small, that's a huge amount for big retail stores to commit to. And they're working with them to slowly, it's not going to be overnight that there's suddenly 15% on the shelves, but they're slowly going to get 15% of Black owned companies. And when you realize that these are huge corporations having a conversation about race, which they never did before.
Yeah.
And if they're able to do it, I feel like we are able to do it. And yes, a lot of corporations haven't signed that pledge, but like Sephora did and West Elm. And those aren't small companies.
Yeah.
And the more we realize it's not a negative to want to change it, it's survival. I don't think we're heading to a place of, I think we need survival. And I want everybody to feel safe in this country. I want us to be the great country that we've always said we were, and the country of opportunity. And right now, that's never been, first of all, it's never really been true, but even more so now, it's just so evident. It's in your face with technology has shown us it is not true. We can look at pay. We can look at the people dying. We can look at
the boards and the
boards of organizations. We can look at, I was really happy that the Recording Academy invited, I think, like 2,300 new members for 2020. And I was happy that like almost 50% were female and that almost like 21, 22% were Black. I was like, okay, because you have to be at the table to make the change. I think that's also what people don't realize is when we have said in like Black Lives Matter that we need white people to be protesting, we need white people to be co-conspirators and allies. What we're saying is, you guys have the privilege, so we need you at the table to make the change and invite us in and allow us to be part of the conversation. Because if people don't let us in, there's no way to get in.
Yeah, and then
there's the conversation.
I think it was Bernice King who was saying, like, also, even just as white people and as white companies, you're saying, we're bringing you in and we're inviting you to the table. That implies, like, just realize what you're saying is, we own the table and we decide when you come in. And so, like, it's built in on so many levels. And that part is really frustrating for me to watch. So I can't imagine how it feels for you. But it just, watching a lot of the people who, let's just have conversations and try and understand. And it's like, I feel like I think it's Erica Hart, who I love watching her Instagram and just like learning from her. But I think she's the one who basically came up with this. But she's always talking about how like we can come up with so many ways to like rescue dogs.
Yes.
Like people love rescuing dogs.
Yes.
And have so many fundraisers and way to help dogs. And then all of a sudden it's like, how do we literally help our fellow people that happen to have a different skin color? And it's like, I don't know what to do.
How do we fix it? How do we,
like,
it's so true.
Put on your rescue dog hat, apparently. Like, come up with 3 things and just start doing it. Because I feel like people learned, all of a sudden people learned what white supremacy was. People that I'd never heard say anything close to, like, people were used to be so offended by the term white supremacy. Now everybody's like, we understand white supremacy, and then at the same time they learned what performative means. So everyone was like, I just don't want to seem performative. I'm like, how did you learn that phrase so fast? And it's like, because they want to keep themselves safe. They don't want to look bad at any cost. And it's like, just accept you are going to look bad. You already look bad.
You're
we
gonna
all
be
look bad.
performative at first too, because until you're fully engaged and invested, like it's gonna, from outside views, might look performative. As long as you know what your intention is, that it's not performative. If other people say you're performative, who cares? Well, people might think that this is performative for me, like talking and stuff. Like, but you know what? This makes me feel good. This makes me feel like this is something I can tackle. I can have conversations. Like, this is where I can do. I can't be at a protest right now. Like, I'm high risk. I'm higher risk for COVID. Like, I can't do that. But I can have as many of these conversations as possible. And that might not fit where some people want it to be, but I know my intention. And when people know their intention, and also realize it's going to be uncomfortable, because when you're going against a system that has been here forever, you're going to get some opposition. It's just natural to get opposition. And you kind of want to.
Yeah.
I want a little bit of opposition. I want, I'm like, oh, that's what I need to talk about.
Right. And I mean, I just think for me, also people that want to call out, like what you're saying, like what I'm doing, if it's not enough, if it's performative, I need that. I need to hear that. And also, those are the people that I don't have to, like, I'm not worried about like helping them get somewhere. They already are understanding a certain amount, you know, and I can learn from them. Yeah. So it's like, that's that thing of learning how to welcome that criticism, because it will happen. Like that sort of, you have to fail a million times, because that's how you learn things. Like there's no, like, you know, like my baby isn't just going to stand up one day and walk. It's not going to happen like that. She's going to smack her head and fall down a million times. And it's painful, and that's it. There's no way around it. It's painful,
and it's a growing process, and we do fail in talking about it. We are going to have uncomfortable moments and places where we're like, oops, that didn't sound right. And also, as you become more aware of your bias and things, like you start, and as you read more, we just all start to have an understanding. And there are people that I follow that I go, oh, and I've had to change language. I had a conversation with Michelle from Privilege to Progress, and I hadn't been using enslaved instead of slaves. And I realized the difference of the terminology, and I started being like, oh, but instead of being offended when we were talking about it, I go, oh, yes, they were enslaved. And I started to realize how that was not offensive to her, but how she was teaching me. Yeah. And if we just all are more open to learn what we don't know, and realize we don't know much. Yeah. Even the people that know a lot still don't know much, because they hid so much from us, and so much of the history is just gone. Yeah. So it's about accepting our ignorance and being like, okay, I don't know all of this, but I'm gonna do as much as I can, and be and try not to be performative, but I'm going to just check something off. I'm going to sign a petition. I'm going to talk to my friend about something that they said that was a microaggression. I'm going to read a book that I wouldn't have normally read, or listen to a podcast that I wouldn't normally listen to expand my mind. Like all of those things will slowly make what you're doing that might seem performative not be performative. And you work your way from ally to co-conspirator, because I always say the goal is to be a co-conspirator. Your goal is to be able to use your privilege to help people.
Yeah.
To realize where your privilege is powerful.
Yeah.
Which could be bringing somebody onto a table. It might be starting a whole new table. Like a whole new place that you're starting from scratch. Like I feel like this. I'm like starting a new table, because I'm not going to even wait to get into certain rooms. I'm like, I will just build a room.
I know. That's what I want.
I know.
And you are building a room. That's what you're doing by, like, you have taken up space, you're having conversations, and you're saying real things. And I know I'm sure it feels uncomfortable to you at times, but like and I'm sure at times it doesn't feel like enough to you, but both of those things together, like, it means something. You're taking up the space that you can take up. And I'm just like challenging myself to, one, any space that I'm in that's all white, that's not natural. That's been manufactured. That's happened on purpose. Why did it happen? Ask where everyone is. And for me, like, for example, getting offered show lineups that are all white, it's my responsibility now to say, hey, I'm noticing this is an all white lineup. Why is that? And can I give you some names? You got to start reaching out. You don't need another white person. It looks like. It looks like you need some color in here.
And that's being a co-conspirator. Like, that is using your privilege and you being in that space to be able to have the conversation, to say, just want to make you aware that this is something else you could be doing. And that is, I appreciate it so much. And I appreciate how you have used your privilege and are continuing to, but also are wanting to learn and willing to have open conversations. And I know we only have a few more minutes, but I wanted to say, like, in country music, it's so far, there's so many people that I know are not racist people, but are so quiet. So it's such a blessing to see the people that are speak so boldly, like in you and Mickey and Jimmy Allen and Lindsay L, like people that are in Sarah Buxton and Abe, like, that are speaking so boldly, because we need it. We need it in every genre of music. We need it with every type of person, because you don't know who's listening.
Yeah, that is so true. And I go back, and to be honest, I'll be really real with you. Like, I go back and forth, because I think to myself, I have to speak to the utmost of my understanding. Like, because if I sell myself short, you don't even realize that, like, your understanding short of somewhere else anyway. So you might as well go to your very edge and try and speak that. And then there's also this other side to me that's like, I keep realizing at the same time that sometimes when I speak publicly in a manner that I think is very direct and open, it shuts doors in other white people. And not to say that it's my job to make people comfortable, but I am starting to feel like it is my job to reach out a hand and have a talk with my people. You know, like, so I wrestle with that a lot. Like, how can I have the biggest impact? Like, maybe my intent is to share knowledge and be truthful, but also am I doing it? You know what I mean? And how can I do it better? Because these one-on-one conversations, you can see right now, like between you and me, when I call someone up on the phone, like other artists, which I've done, and said, like, hey, how are you feeling about this? What are you thinking about? Like, What can we do?
Mm-hmm.
That accountability is.
It cut off because we reached our time limit. Let me see if I can get Cam back on. Hi. That's what happens when we reach our time limit. It just cuts off. Hi. See if I get Cam back on here for a few. Yes, we came back. Cam, uh-oh. Let me get her. We're gonna get her back on so at least we can say bye. My poor connection. That's what happens. Okay, I'm gonna get Cam back on just so we can at least say bye.
We timed out.
We timed out. So I was like, oh, we have to at least like say goodbye and stuff.
Yeah, no, I was like just saying like it's
and I want to hear your statement.
It's a wild thing to balance, you know, wanting to be someone that is disruptive and honest and truthful and direct, and then also wanting to make sure that you are bringing your people with you.
Yes.
And that is a different conversation for me as a white person than it is for you. But I acknowledge that as someone who is white, that is in these circles, that has a chance to like reach out a hand and say, come on, like keep going. Like I make an effort when I see people start on their journey, like keep going. Like we want to get there. And I know we're not doing it right yet. I know you're not doing it right yet, but we're going to get there. And instead of where sometimes it is warranted and I just get really frustrated. Because especially if you see, that's why it's like a symphony, right? We're all commenting at different times on different levels. Like you don't get to be the person that comes like straight shooting every time. It's like if someone's doing it straight shooting already, then you can be the person that comes back around and says like, hey pal, come this way, you know, like we can go this way. So I'm trying really hard to balance on that. So I mean, I think that's and and everyone around me, like if you see it going a different way, you call me out. But I'm trying.
And I want to say that I truly appreciate that. And one thing I've done is I'm more open to people asking questions. Like I have some friends that are like, I'm not teaching anybody anything. Like they can learn. I'm more open to be like, if you want to know something, if I truly believe that you've done your work and you want to know, like I'm more than happy to steer you other ways and to talk and to answer questions that you might not ask to another person because they might think you're racist or something like that. Like, but I have the capacity to do that. And I feel because from where I come from, I'm not as tired as some of my friends are. And so I use that. I go, I'm not as tired. So I'll take this one.
Yeah.
I've had to stop the Facebook rants on battling. So I'm like, I can't battle people on social media, but
I know.
And it took
hard.
me, I did for a while. And I was like, oh, and my friends would see it and they would be texting me information to like use. And I'm like, this can't be good for my mental health. So we're going to stop that.
No.
But I will have conversations with people.
And I do know what you're saying though, because sometimes if you are entering into this space, especially as a white person, and you start a conversation and then I feel like you're responsible for your space and your posts. Yeah. And if someone's on your stuff saying things that are super hurtful or ignorant, like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, they're not policing that in the correct way. No. Like that's a horrible term to use now at this point, but they're not keeping it a safe space. So how can I do that? So like, I feel like I have to have something said back, usually like also like it's really nice community members will kind of jump in and say something too, but like you don't want anything to go unanswered because then there is some shy person behind the keyboard going like, maybe they
Yeah.
are right. That horrible thing they said, maybe that is right. And you're like, oh no, there's like 8 million. Let me just break it down.
Let me tell you. No, I've been posting. I sometimes screenshot what people send me. So if you send me something that's hateful, just be aware it could get screenshotted, and I put it on my stories. And people go, they say that stuff to
Do
you?
you block out the names, or do you not block out the names?
Depends on how hateful it is.
Yeah.
If it's on, sometimes it's on a public forum. So if it's on like Facebook and on my public page, which is fully open, I'm like, if you were willing to write this for anybody to see, but if you send a DM, usually I'll block out the name, but I'm like, this person just realized this is what's coming at me. And most things I'll conversate with, but if somebody says white privilege isn't real or Black Lives Matter is racist, like those things, I'm like,
so many bots
those are my triggers
right now. Yeah.
Those are my triggers where I go,
Yeah.
Okay,
I know.
you're making me go after you.
I know.
Because it's not. But then I also go, okay, sometimes I'll just put it on the stories and it starts a conversation with other people to me. And I go, this is why this is offensive to me.
Yeah.
And it teaches other people without even having to respond to that person.
Yeah.
Because that person's probably not watching my stories.
Right.
The person just wants to make me upset.
Yeah.
And make me feel little.
Right.
And
I think
I'm
it's
all
so
about
to
raising the vibration.
Yeah. Are you doing a good job of taking care of yourself too right now?
I am. I've been working out a lot. I'm very pro therapy. So I go to therapy on Zoom, and I'm very much, one of the ways I'm not doing it is I'm not engaging with those communities on Facebook, and I'm very pro deleting people.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's okay, because what I want to see is love.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to have any conversation that is based in love and based in understanding.
And I feel like you get to do that. You get to protect yourself. And I just want to say, just for us white women, especially, that want to see love and positivity, it's not the same.
It's not the same. No.
No, we don't get to protect ourselves from that, because that is us, and that's in us, and that's our work, so it's some of that, coming from you, it's different than coming from
and I'm very much Elaine Welteroth said, like, sometimes just existing is starting the revolution. So I've been very much like, while I post a lot about the movement, I also have been trying to post my joys, because Black joy is a revolution. Like, you're trying to take my joy, you're trying to divide, you're trying to do this, and I'm going to post that.
It's like,
to go against.
It's like trauma porn of just like, it's exhausting for me. I can't, it's how it just must shut down your mind to have to look at that every day.
It's a lot. And me and Mickey text a lot and go, and I go, how are you feeling today? How's your heart? And she's like, girl, it's exhausted. I'm like, I know. And sometimes it's just those things of exhaustion, and I have to turn off my phone. But I'm becoming more aware of how I feel about it and how traumatic it is to my soul, and how much I also am offended when people post their privilege in the middle of 2 pandemics, and also are not aware that what they're posting is just showing me their privilege so blatantly that I'm like, okay. And some people, I'll say, like, if I'm friends with you, like, I'll send messages and I'll text and I'll be like, just so you know, we're in the middle of a pandemic and the civil rights movement and all sorts of stuff, just so you know. So that margarita photo, like, with no mask, I find offensive. Post what you want, but I always say, if you're going to post, do action. Post your joys if that's what you need to do. Just make sure you're doing action on the back end. It doesn't always have to be posted or shown, but make that phone call, sign that petition, have that conversation, because the actions, if you're just posting and not even doing actions, like, don't post. Post, do actions. But I'd rather you just do actions, no matter what, if it's a choice.
I think just like small shout out to the people that are introverted. Like, if calling people the thought of calling someone makes you very nervous. Because I know that's how I feel every time before I get on like a phone call, like to call the Kentucky Metro Council or whatever.
Yes.
So
I call them a lot.
Yeah, you get nervous before, if you're an introvert, about calling. Like maybe you don't know what to say, but also just maybe you're the person that's like, this is a lot. Like, don't feel bad if petitions is like, if that's your thing, go sign all those petitions. Yeah. Like, that's cool. Like, know your strengths too. Like how you're saying, like, it's not safe for you to go out and protest. That's okay. There is stuff to do, like all over the place, you know, and like you don't have to spend your time feeling bad. You can't do the one way that is difficult for you. Like, definitely give it a try, you know, like go give a phone call a try. It's not as bad as you think, but if it's just, I feel like people don't say that enough. There's a lot of very introverted people like me who get
There's a lot of introverted people. I know. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
And thank you. And like I said last time, I hope we get to do another conversation like this, because I thoroughly enjoy, first of all, just conversating with you and hearing from all sides. And I think that these are necessary. These are necessary in pulling things from the roots, because I think that we have to do that, and then we could start healing. So, and this is a marathon. This is not a sprint, so it's gonna.
I know, but it makes me excited, because then every time we talk, I'm like, "This is what I've learned." Here I come.
It's so good. It's so good. It just gives me energy too. I'm like, I feel hopeful.
Yeah,
and I think that is the way I've tried to wake up. Be like, I want to be hopeful. I know nothing's going to change immediately, but if I'm hopeful, I can go on another day and keep trying. So I love you.
I love you too. Thank you so much for like making this space. And I think it's so nice to see all the people commenting that are.
Yes. Thank you, everybody that's watching and digesting this information.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to jump off. I hear a baby.
Yeah.
Did you hear that?
Yes.
Just woke up. So, all right. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
I love you.
Love you too.